For the Greeks, writes James Hillman, the archetypal psychologist, in his book, The Dream and the Underworld, the soul, the psyche, was an image, maybe also a sound. 3 dimensions become 2, he writes, as the perspective of nature, flesh, and matter fall away, leaving an existence of immaterial, mirror-like images, eidola, from the Greek eidos, meaning form or shape, but also connected etymologically to seeing, with all the different levels of seeing implied by that word: perceiving, beholding, knowing. We have to be careful, though, about words, he says. When we are using words to describe these eidola, these images, because these images are not substantial. In other words, they're not made of substance, and so we may not really use our convenient substantializing language to describe them. We maybe need more of that language. We can't say of these images whether they appear to us in a dream or in the trigrams of the yi. We can't say that they are this or that. We can only speak of these images as they seem to be, or appear to be, or what they could be likened to, such as heaven, earth, fire, water, thunder, mountains, wind, and lakes. So our statements about these images must be prefixed by an as. It's as if they're a lake. And then he says that the as if acts as a kind of coin that we offer Charon, the passage bearer of Hades, for taking us across the separating waters between these 2 kinds of speech, or maybe even between these 2 kinds of being. The dead, as well as gods, maybe even that god over there, speak differently. They whisper or they call. The dead, as well as the gods, he writes, speak differently. They whisper. Their talk has lost its positive substance, its natural certainty. We must lean in close if we want to hear this speech. Hillman was renowned for sticking to his guns on this matter. From the accounts I've read of people doing therapy with him, classical, Freudian, or even Jungian interpretations of his patient's material, whether presented through dreams or existential reflections, were seldom employed and certainly very often not really tolerated. Commentary, we might say, was kind of verboten for Hillman. In fact, he says in another book, he says, I cannot raise my voice strongly enough against these methods, the methods of interpretation. Writing is a very Enneagram 8 challenger, I would say. This is in Revisioning Psychology. He says in there that to lock down the images of the soul into rigid frameworks or fixed interpretations, whatever they might be, for Hillman, was tantamount to a form of abuse. The abuse of the soul's first freedom, the freedom to imagine, and he describes this as the source of our peculiar individualness, our art, our science, our culture. The autonomy of fantasy, he says, is the soul's last refuge of dignity, its guarantor against oppression. If we are willing to accept internal controls upon the imagination, we will have succumbed already in our souls to the same authoritarianism that often dominates the body politic. And he was writing this in the 90s, even more so now. We sin against the imagination, he says, whenever we ask an image for its meaning, requiring that images be translated into concepts. The coiled snake in the corner of a dream cannot be translated, he says, into my fear or your sexuality or my mother complex without killing the snake. We do not hear music, touch sculpture, read stories with meaning in mind, but really for the sake of the imagination. Rather than vivifying the imagination by connecting our conceptual intellects with the images of dreams and fantasies, what we often do is we settle for analysis, exchanging the power, we might also say the magic, or even poetry in its most expansive form, exchanging those for interpretations. So I was thinking about Hillman last night after this wonderful conversation I had with the independent scholar, writer, YouTuber, YouTube is the name of his channel, Harmen Mesker, who is also the founder of the Yijing Research Center, which is based in the Netherlands. So Harmen, like Hillman, I would say, is pretty hardcore with regard to using and exploring the essence, the authentic heart and soul, we might say, of the Yi, what is known as the Zhou Yi, there we go, I got it, which presents the original hexagrams and the judgments of the Yijing without the later Confucian commentaries and everything else that followed in their wake. You know, really going back to kind of like, I don't know, the source, if you like, right? And talking to him, particularly about translation, and also seeing how difficult and multifarious it is to put words and the text of the Zhou Yi into some kind of semantic clarity, I became immediately kind of converted to Harmen's fundamental idea that we need to stick with the images, with the trigrams, with poetry in its most expansive form when we are seeking answers from the Yi. And that's how we're going to get our answers. So I'm definitely going to have the idiot doing more of that in future videos because it makes so much sense to me. The idiot, as you know, has been on this Yi journey for a couple of months, so forgive his ignorance, whereas Mesker has been on the path for about 40 years, even though I think we're of a somewhat similar age. Understandably, there is a lot to learn from my new Yi guru. And so I suggest we start where the idiot should have started, but didn't. He was watching all of Harmen's videos from the newest to the oldest. But if you start with the first offering on his channel, what you get are an initial description of the 8 trigrams. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share those with you, reading his words and using his images. Hope you don't mind, Harmen. It's just you so beautifully laid it out. To kind of get us in the mood for the direction that at least I'm going to be going, much more so in terms of interpreting these trigrams and the judgments that issue forth from them.
The first trigram that is often referred to is that of heaven, and this is what Harmen has to say about heaven. It is a trigram that is completely made of yang lines. Yang is strong, yin is soft. Yang is high, yin is low. Yang is immaterial, yin is material. You can't touch yang, but you can touch yin. Because this trigram is completely made of yang lines, all these qualities are qualities of heaven. It has a focus, it leads, it inspires, and is able to set goals. It doesn't necessarily mean that these goals will be achieved. In fact, heaven is not very good at realizing ideas. It lacks the yin part to realize ideas and intentions. It needs other trigrams for that. Without yin, the trigram heaven will be stuck with ideas that it can't fulfill. The counterpart of heaven, then, is the trigram earth. Earth is completely made of yin lines. Yin is able to realize the ideas of heaven. Earth says to heaven, "Give me your seeds, and I will make them grow to their potential." Earth does not take initiatives. Instead, it works with that which comes towards her, which is given to her. It nourishes, it feeds, without judgment or preference. This will always lead to results, but the result is decided by what is given to Earth and how Earth is able to nourish it. When nothing is given to Earth, nothing will grow. Earth, being completely yin, is dependent on yang for the seeds that it can bring to maturity. Heaven and Earth are trigrams with either only yang lines or only yin lines. The remaining 6 trigrams are a mixture of yin and yang. They are the children trigrams, and heaven and earth, we might say, are the parents. The trigram with a single low yang line is thunder. Thunder is shocking. It indicates a new beginning. It is the alarm that rings in the morning to wake you up. Thunder acts on impulse with one big sweep, not minding the consequences. It demands sudden change and abolishes the old. Everything that is fast and short and reckless can be characterized by thunder. Thunder has impact, but it is not impact that will necessarily last. It can be a sort of hype impact that will quickly be replaced by the next fashionable whim. The counterpart of thunder is wind. Where thunder acts without thinking or concern for consequences, wind is slow and thoughtful, deliberating every single step, consistently and continuously working towards her goal. It never gives up and is not bothered by hindrances. It will simply move around them or take a step back and try again and again. Wind is inquisitive, communicative, and focused on exchange. It is erosion that can make a mountain melt away, even though this can take thousands of years. Wind works on the long term, minding every detail. It takes its steps with patience. The next trigram is a trigram that is not always met with enthusiasm. It is the trigram that represents flowing water, the river that is formed by its surroundings, ever flowing down, seeking the ultimate lowest point. It goes deep, really deep. Because rivers in early China were unpredictable causes of adversities, the trigram water became synonymous with danger and uncertainty. You can't rationalize trigram water. It acts according to the flow of its feelings without trying to comprehend them or questioning the source of these moods and sensations. It goes with the flow, not knowing to where it leads or how the path will be. Enjoy the ride is what it is trying to say, even though the flow of water is decided by its environment. Even though the flow of water is decided by its environment, it does not let boundaries stop its course. How it will flow is of no concern to water, as long as it is able to go deeper and ever deeper. The opposite of water is, of course, fire. Whereas water flows freely, fire will cling to its source. It will connect and not let go, otherwise it would die out. Fire represents dependencies, but also commitment. Fire gives light. It will show everything as it truly is, without compromise. It is able to build relationships, but also to show the shared common ground that is inherited by these relationships. It reveals what binds and what is binding. It shows the dependencies that lead to attachments, and by doing so, it helps us to understand how our bonds and connections are shaped by these dependencies and attachments. It protects and shelters what is weak. If we are looking for a trigram that is stubborn, conservative, and somewhat unmovable, well, here you have it. It is the trigram mountain. If you would turn this trigram upside down, you would have the trigram thunder, new beginnings, radical change. But mountain is not that. It eschews anything that is new, progressive, or otherwise a sign of change. Mountain wants to keep everything as it is. It is the refrigerator that conserves what has to stay reliable and trustworthy. It is introverted and sets boundaries that it will not allow to be crossed. It excels at evaluating what has been learnt from the past and building a solid foundation from this, from which future generations can benefit. And finally, the last trigram is the happiest trigram, we might say. It is the trigram lake, which represents joy, happiness, and a carefree spirit. Don't worry, be happy is her motto. She doesn't care about responsibilities, instead focusing on what gives her a sense of fulfillment and joy. She represents witches and wizards and does not refrain from unconventional methods if they are needed to make the situation easier, more pleasant, less gloomy. Her optimism motivates us to see opportunities that us worrywarts would never see. Trigram Lake has a sense of creative but also religious inspiration that enjoys and excites, but it risks the chance of losing touch with reality.
I don't know about you, but I find this very intriguing, very inspiring. After you've been steeped in this stuff for 40 years, Harmen tells me, everything kind of becomes a trigram, which is perhaps to say that we finally get to lift whatever veil of illusion our ego cage has us sometimes trapped in or under, and so begin to glimpse the Tao's subtle patterns, unveiling that harmonious web that we are told, and we sometimes feel, connects us profoundly and intimately to the very essence of the universe and our place in it. But maybe we need a little bit of assistance when it comes to really, really connecting.